This video is based on a presentation that I made at the 17th James Joyce Italian Foundation Conference in Rome, Italy at the end of January 2025. It's based in part on a public lecture I gave as part of the Bloomsday celebrations in Oslo, Norway in 2024, and is entitled James Joyce and His Norwegian Connections. The original lecture was a public lecture and I gave a bit of background into James Joyce and his works. This presentation was made at an academic conference dedicated to James Joyce, and a certain understanding of his works would be helpful in watching this video. But not to worry, if you have any questions, pop them into the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I work here in the Technological University, but we're based in the plateau plain of Grangegorman. What's on the plateau plain of Grangegorman? Well, Deityville. And Deityville was the former Richmond District Lunatic Asylum, which in Ulysses, this is the little review version with Connolly Norman with one N. Connolly Norman was the chief psychiatrist. If you go to the Gabler edition, Connolly has developed another N. And someone like me, that's, now not just me, in 1989, New York Times review, Grave Matters. This goes on and on and on and on about the N. Anyway, if you were like me, you would whip out your Tom's 1903 and you'd find in Offices of Government, you'll find Connolly Norman in here with one N. You'll find him a bit further on in the Office of Inspectors of Lunatic Asylums. You'll find him here with one N. Go a bit further and you'll find him here in the Medical Directory as a Fellow of the College of Physicians. He's also got one N. But if you go to the back, you'll find a Connolly Norman with two N's, living at St. Dimpness on the North Circular Road. This is St. Dimpness, where Mr. Connolly Norman with one N is there. You wonder, why is all this matter? But if you were like me, you know, you would then go and you'd look up the census, which you can now do online. There's one Connolly Norman. There's only 10 people with Connolly spelt that way as a first name. There's 34 spelt the other way. That wouldn't be good enough for you, know. For someone like me, I would run down to his grave. That's exactly what I would do. I did that last week. This is Connolly Norman last Thursday. He's definitely got one N, or his wife thought so because she outlived him quite some time. And I essentially run around Dublin. I discovered Dublin by reading and running and reading and researching. And I turned James Joyce's four major works into half marathons. And this might seem like a very odd thing to do, it even does to me. But anyway, and then I basically try and find out stuff about James Joyce. And the JJ is obvious, the 21K is the distance of a half marathon. These two quotes really get to me. This is from a portrait, that as he went by Baird's stone-cutting works in Talbot Place, the spirit of Ibsen would blow through him like a keen wind, a spirit of wayward, boyish beauty. And then we get to Ulysses, and between this point and high at present unlit warehouses of Baird's Place, Stephen thought to think of Ibsen associated with birds and stonecutters in his mind somehow in Talbot Place, and think, why would this unassuming street be so important? This is a book, those of you who studied architecture like I did, it's a very famous book, Space, Time and Architecture. It was written in 1940, published in 1941. It's on its 6th edition now, it's like a primer. But, interestingly enough, the Joyce family stayed with the Gideons at that point in time. The Joyce family spent Christmas Day at the Gideons at $7 Hotel. And there's more criticism, architectural criticism in this paragraph than there is in all of Joyce when he gives out about the Gideons moving to Marcel Breuer houses nearby. But where Joyce was and who he met influenced his work. That's essentially what I kind of get through. And I tried to turn James Joyce's life into a spreadsheet, as you do, taking Norburn's book, and these are all the months, or these are all the years by month, and these are all where he lived, what he wrote, what he did, what he was up to. I think they're very important. This is from Joyce and Ibsen. We finally get somewhere towards Norway. So this is Joyce and Ibsen by Tisdall from 1968. And my favorite quote in this is where he says, from Ellmann's biography, it may seem as if Joyce put most of the crucial incidents of his early life into a portrait in Ulysses, but it is useful to remember that Ellmann's eminent book is very much a portrait of the artist. There must have been wide areas of Joyce's life that we do not know because he did not explore them in his portrait of Stephen, and therefore did not leave clues that biographers can work on. But this book, Joyce admits Homer's work inspired Ulysses, and his homage and indebtedness to its source material are clear. So why were Anderson's contributions not recognized? So Joyce has left big pieces out, Ellmann has left big pieces out. And mind the gap. We're here to look at what the gaps are. 1879. John Stanislaus Joyce and Mary Jane are walking in Grafton Street. Her father's not much enamored by their relationship. He comes down, bundles her into a cab, and they go off. A crowd gathers, and Joyce's father says, according to Stanislaus, nothing serious, just the usual story of the beautiful daughter and irascible parent. Freeman's Journal, 1887. Now in this, you'll see Here's Mr. Sheehy here, and here's Alderman Hooper. Strange occurrence in Dublin. A captain charged with shooting at a clergyman for seducing his daughter. John Stanislaus got off fairly lightly. This is from the Kerry Evening Post of Christmas Eve, and it's just easier to see, to be honest, but it was in all of the newspapers. This guy is shot. So all of the places in this article are in Joyce, which is just probably coincidental. But he arrives, this Reverend Henry Peter Higginson White Melville arrives at Kingstown. He gets a train. He's followed on the train by Captain Dunn. They get to Weston Row. Dunn abducts him. They go to Jones's Court. They go to the Grosvenor Hotel. They go to the Gresham. They somehow make their way around Dublin. They get to Parliament Street when finally Dunn shoots him. But he's wearing a big thick rug and he's fine. And so who's this man who was so protective of his daughter, and who was his daughter? So it was Captain Dunn, and this is his daughter, who at the age of 27 married Chavalita Dunn, as she was then known, eloped to Norway with an alcoholic and violent bigamist, one previously shot, Henry Higginson. Thereafter, she was twice married, once divorced, once widowed. She had a fleeting romance with the Norwegian novelist Knut Hamsun, as well as a string of other love affairs. In one way, then, George Edgerton, as she was to become, epitomized the fast new women heroine, independent and sexually free. She's older than Joyce. She was born before him, but she lived after him. But she met Hamsun. She fell instantly in love with him. He was like an American bison or a lion. You might put his head among the rarest and handsomest heads in the world. In London, Chavalita began her translation of Hunger. In 1893, a couple of years later, a minor literary sensation was caused by Elkin Matthews and John Lane when they published a book, Keynotes, by said same George Edgerton. It was militantly feminine and thus took its place in the suffragette movement. This is the front page. Elkin Matthews, John Lane, Aubrey Beardsley did these. It's very hard to think that Joyce wouldn't have known of this. Really, for me, it's hard to figure out. To Knut Hamsun, in memory of day when the west wind and the rainbow met. So it's dedicated to Hamsun. His novel was published in 1890. This is from Auster's introduction, but essentially Hunger, or a portrait of the artist as a young man, but it is an apprenticeship that has little in common with the early struggles of other writers. Hunger is not a metaphor. It's the very crux of the problem itself. We come on to Hunger. Now scarred, itself, someone who, more like Joyce, wrote from personal experience. There isn't a single childhood portrait in Hamsun. Characters emerge from nothing in his books. Some of these characters somehow become the first mass-produced humans. That is, without their own predetermining origins. They're determined by the present. Here is the present in Hunger. A brutal red-hot anger flared up in me. I fetched my parcel in the entranceway, clenched my teeth, ran into peaceful folk on the pavement without apologizing. When a gentleman stopped and reprimanded me sharply for my behavior, I turned around and screamed a single meaningless word in his ear, shook my fist under his nose and walked on, appalled by a blind rage that I couldn't control. Who was he like? Apart from the first person, it's very like counterparts. He began to feel thirsty again. He longed to be back in the hot, reeking public house. He'd lost his reputation as a strong man, had been defeated twice by a mere boy. His heart swelled with fury, and when he thought of the woman in the big hat who brushed against him and said, "Pardon," his fury nearly choked him. So these two seem to me very similar. These three books were in Joyce's library. But it's unexplored. Nobody has, it is explored. There are people who've done it, but not in huge detail. Joyce is well aware of the black foreigners and the white foreigners, the Dovegals and Fingalls. This is from his Island of Saints and Sages. The conflicts with the Danish and the Norwegians, the black foreigners and white foreigners, as they were called, follow each other so continuously and ferociously to make this entire era a veritable slaughterhouse. He's well aware of the Danish and Norwegian origins of Dublin, and Donegal Coran calls them the Dub Genti and the Finn Genti. The Dub Genti, traditionally the Danes, the Finn Genti, typically the Normans. People thought it was hair colouring, dark hair, light hair. Seems a bit much for me. Also for Smith, who thinks it's old foreigners and new foreigners. But Joyce was really aware of the Dubgallians and the Fingallians. This seems to me to be absolutely no surprise there. Dubliners, Finnegan's Wake. It's the same thing, themes over and over. Most people are aware of Joyce's Ibsen's new drama from 1900, his letter to Henrik Ibsen of 1901. This I love. This is from A Doll's House. Nora says, "No, but that's not quite right, Christine. Torvald is so indescribably devoted to me, so he wants to give me all for himself alone, as he says. In the beginning, no, I was yet jealous if I so much as mentioned any of the dear people from home." And who does this sound like? Well, Nora, my faithful darling. This is Joyce writing to Norman Barnacle. You can all read. My sweet blackguard schoolgirl, who goes on, and then you're always my beautiful wildflower of the hedges, my dark blue rain-drenched flower. Can't believe that when he met Nora on Nassau Street, for Finn's Hotel, he didn't think of Ibsen and Nora in Ibsen. Those kinds of things matter to him. as does certain little jealousies that come into his life. Ibsen permeates. It's in Stephen Hero. I mentioned his portrait of the artist. I mentioned Ulysses. I like this poem. It's a poem he wrote about Ibsen's ghosts. Dear quick, whose conscience buried deep, the grim old grouser has been salving. Permit one spectre more to peep. I am the ghost of Captain Alvey. But a couple of paragraphs on is what the one I really like. My spouse bore me a blighted boy, our slavey pupped a bouncing bitch. For eternity thy name is joy, when the wire's sire knows which is which. It's never far away. And these are all the mentions of plays in Finnegan's Wake. So pretty much every play is in Finnegan's Wake. So his knowledge is pretty extensive. These are just all the references to the Master Builder. They're fantastic. I love all these puns. Monster Builder, Meister Bowler. Anyway, they're all there. Now, let's talk about the plays just briefly. Jim did write a play, The Brilliant Career, which he wrote on, I think, a strip back from Mullingar. This is again Stanislaus. But essentially, it's based on Ibsen's work. I think Joyce didn't like it and he threw it away or burned it. Here's a picture. Now, Exiles itself was written between a portrait and Ulysses. I think it's a very important work. It started here as it happens. And this is from Gorman talking about the influence of Henrik Ibsen is obvious in the play. And it is when you read the play. The thing that I find most interesting about the play, apart from the incredibly confusing naming structure, where they're all called such similar names that you're always having to mentally juggle. But it's this, it's set in 1912. Why is 1912 so important? Why not 1911 or why any time? Because 1912 was the last time he came back to Dublin. That's encoded in all this is all sorts of stuff from 1912. But let's get back. We go back to when the influence of Henrik Ibsen particularly came to Joyce. He was in the Royal University 1898 to 1902. He lived in this house first. This is the 9th house of all. Anyway, we won't go through all of Joyce's houses. This is house 9 from 1896 to May 1899. House 10, still in 1899, Convent Avenue. Richmond Avenue, or what's left of it, 1900s. Royal Terrace, late 1901. And then just after that, he moves further away to Glengarriff Parade. These houses, the first 4 are all similar. This is all similarly located. This is Windsor Avenue is over here. Then there's Richmond Avenue. Then there's Inverness Road, Royal Terrace. And then the other one is down there. There's the lunatic asylum from which you hear the one wailing over the wall. This is Dublin. He lived here and he had to go here to South Georgian Court, the university. And this is said Talbot Place. Now, this is the most easterly bridge in Dublin at the time. Nowadays, you would cross different ways. But he's coming from up here. So, of course, the quickest way is down this way, going to the university or going to the Nightman's Shelter. So, Talbot Place is very important. I was going to photograph it, but because the guards the police park their cars all here, I was a bit nervous about getting my drone out. But it's not a particularly special street. This is from Tom's. The engineers came and left birds. They weren't stonecutters. They came and left shortly around the same time Joyce was in the university. And these are the same 2 quotes just for reminding, but somehow Stephen thought to think of Ibsen associated with birds, stonecutters in his mind somehow in Talbot Place. And what's that somehow? This annoyed the hell out of me. I read every single play by Ibsen to try to get them all of this. I read all these books. And this one. And this one. And this one. And all the other books with the footnotes, and I got nowhere. They all seem to refer to When We Dead Awaken, the review in It's New Drama, but that mentions every play, and I can't see it myself. The phrasing echoes, this is the Sloats and Lamagonians and Turners. The phrasing echoes a line from Joyce's essay, Ibsen's New Drama. But we know that from Stanislaus that he was very, he says, one afternoon, he comes back to me distinctly, the afternoon when Ibsen's Master Builder arrived, it was evident my brother stayed up all night to read that play. So I think many things are happening. To get back to the portmanteau words, the plateau plain of Grangegorman. If you've ever been to Grangegorman, it's a superb description. Somebody works there. But I think it's comprised of all of these things. I think the Master Builder, all of the place. I think this is way, 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 way more likely. This is Baird Mac Emer, King of Dublin with his brothers Siegfried and Sitrick. Now, I think it's much more likely with Joyce's knowledge that he's going down the street, he walks down, he sees a place called Baird's, and he thinks of the King of Dublin. I think that is much more likely. And just in case nobody knew, Baird means bard. So Baird is the occupational name from the Gaelic bard, poet, minstrel. Grazie mille.